How's Fatty about Cincinnati? What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.
Hello, Reds fans. Along with my co-host Jack Greiner, we are pleased to introduce a special guest today, Josh Sneed. Josh is a nationally touring comedian who's had appearances on Comedy Central, including his own comedy special. His special, quote, Josh Sneed, Live in the Desert, unquote, was released in 2018 by Dry Bar Comedy. Clips from the special have been viewed more than 50 million times. He has made numerous appearances on the nationally syndicated The Bob and Tom Show and performed on many stops of their sold-out theater tour. He shared the stage with Dave Chappelle, Jim Gaffigan, Ron White, Kevin Hart, and many others. Josh is a headliner in stand-up comedy clubs around the country and has performed at numerous private and corporate events. He currently resides in Union, Kentucky with his wife, 2 kids, and a pug named Ham. Welcome
right.
to We Love Our Team, Josh Sneed.
Thank you, gentlemen. What a lovely introduction, Randy. You're all so kind.
Hey, Josh, it's really good to meet you. I've seen your work and admire it, but we've never had a chance to actually meet. We'll talk about your stand-up, role and Cincy Shirts and other business ventures. But we'd like to know a little bit, and I think our listeners would love to know a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and of course, where you went to high school.
Where I went to high school. It wouldn't be a Cincinnati podcast without asking that question.
Absolutely.
I grew up in St. Bernard. I went to St. Bernard Elmwood Place High School, home of the Titans. My mother grew up in St. Bernard. My father grew up in Elmwood, so they were both born and raised there. And I lived there until I was almost 21. So that I didn't know anything in my childhood other than St. Bernard, and just such a great place to grow up in a cool old Main Street type neighborhood back in the day, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I loved it. It was a very small high school. I had 73 in my graduating class, but Procter Gamble had a huge amount of real estate in St. Bernard, so the taxes that they paid to the city meant that our school had great teachers, and we always had new uniforms for sports and new textbooks, even though we were super tiny. So I went to St. Bernard. A bunch of my friends went to Roger Bacon down the street, but
sure,
born and raised on the Cincy side, and went to NKU for a couple years. Got hired by Procter Gamble in the IT department after I was initially a contractor there as a summer job, and worked at P&G until at the same time I started doing comedy, and I did both of those things for about 3.5 years. And then P&G was announcing some layoffs, but before they said who had to go, they asked who wanted to go. And I was 24 years old, and felt like if comedy didn't pan out, I could always get back into the corporate world. I didn't have a family or anything at the time to support. So like Randy just did, I raised my hand. I said, I'll take that severance package. And that was, it'll be 24 years in July that happened.
That's awesome. So this is, you didn't know this. We didn't know it either, or at least I didn't know it, but this turns out to be St. Bernard High School week on our podcast. We talked earlier this week to an author who wrote a children's book about Dottie Kamenchik, right? I think she was a St. Bernard High School graduate, a little older than you, like probably by about 60 years. And she played in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. And there's some speculation that Gina Davis's character is based on her. So I don't know if you knew your fellow alum there, Dottie.
Yeah. It's awesome. I mean, it's like I said, such a small school. So, I hosted the Roger Bacon Stag Sports Banquet one year, and they were honoring, like they were inducting a guy who played in the 70s, who went to Notre Dame and had this like career in the NFL. And I'm like, he's just now getting into the Roger Bacon Hall of Fame. Like St. Bernard's Hall of Fame is so easy to get into. Like you could just be really good at cornhole and they'll put you in. I mean, it's like the list of distinguished alumni. You know, if anybody does anything, you know about it.
Josh, did you play sports growing up?
I did. I played soccer and baseball. You know, St. Bernard didn't have a football team. They got rid of it in the 70s, and then they brought it back a few years ago because I think that the team actually consists of kids from a couple of different schools now. But when I was there was no football, so everybody played soccer. I wasn't good enough at basketball to make that team, so I just spent the winters getting ready for baseball because that was my first love.
What position did you play?
Mostly outfield. They tried to make me a pitcher once I got to high school because I'm left-handed. So I did get to pitch a couple of games my last year of high school, and I really enjoyed it. But I wish I had gotten into the pitching side of it sooner. And now my son, who's 13, also left-handed, also bats right-handed, which is a really strange thing. He is taken to the pitching at a very early age, and he's super into it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, going back though, were you the class clown? I mean, were you kind of like the funny guy in high school?
Yeah. Yeah, I was part of a group of funny guys, but we were all really good students. So that's kind of the weird dynamic, is that we were like straight A students, but in detention because we just were. There was one teacher in particular, our history and government teacher, Miss Jackson. We put that woman through everything. I'm proud to say I was actually part of something that later became known as the detention club. And basically what the detention club was, it was a group of us that were so bad that she would have detention slips pre-filled out with our names on them, so that if we got a detention, all she had to do was write in the date and hand it to us to save her time from filling the whole thing out. And then it got so bad after that when we would walk into the room, she would hand us a detention slip at the beginning of class.
Wow.
And if we were good, we got to give it back at the end to save her the time of having to walk it over to our desk. But when we'd be in there, she would be so laid back and funny, and like she would basically say, guys, like what you're doing is hilarious, but I can't let people get away with that. So, you know, that's why you're in here. And it was kind of a badge of honor I wore. I'll tell you real quick, the greatest prank that I pulled was this Adam Sandler movie, Billy Madison, came out when I was a senior. And there's a scene in the movie, if you've seen it, where he's pranking an old man in his neighborhood. He scrapes some dog poop into a paper bag, puts it on the porch, lights it on fire, rings the doorbell, and the guy comes out and steps on it in his boots. And it's like, as an 18-year-old, like, it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life. And maybe even as a 48-year-old, it still is. But we're all talking about it at school, and we tell Miss Jackson, we're going to do that to you. We're going to do this to you. And she's like, you won't do that to me. Kids like you are why I had my name and address removed from the phone book. Good luck even finding me. Well, my mom was president of the Board of Education, so she had a faculty and staff directory at our house. And Miss Jackson, for our class, was coming from her previous class across the school. So a lot of times our class would be seated when she gets there a minute or two after the bell rings. So I knew I had a few minutes, and she walks into the room the next day, and her home address is written on the chalkboard while we're all just sitting there waiting for class to begin. And she eventually figured out it was me, but I was really proud of that one because she told me it couldn't be done.
Hold my beer.
But what's also hilarious is, like, after I started doing stand-up, all my elementary and high school teachers would start coming to the comedy club to see me, and they would tell me how proud they are of me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the same stuff that got me in trouble for you, but now you're proud that I've made a career of it. And I always thought that was ironic.
That's funny. So, our podcast is about Reds fandom, and so we want to hear about your fandom and how it developed over the years, and maybe your first game or any memories or anything about like that.
Yeah, I don't remember my first game. My dad was a huge Reds and Bengals fan. He didn't really care about college sports. It was Reds, Bengals, and NASCAR. He loved cars of any kind of, any kind of racing or fixing up old cars. Like that was his passion, but he loved baseball, loved the Reds. And so, when I was a kid, I didn't get to go to games very often. It was usually like if they signed me for the Reds Pepsi Dugout Club and we got a couple tickets, or if I got good enough grades, you'd get a couple tickets. And then he would always, once a year, he would schedule a group outing for our church. So he would, everybody would climb into the church bus and he'd drive it down, and our whole church would go to a Reds game. So it was really a couple times a year maybe that I got to go to games, but I was always, just like taken aback by how big the stadium was, and just, I couldn't tell you who won or lost any game that I was at. I was just so happy to be there. And, it was all the stuff that everybody talks about. You buy the red, you try to sneak down to the green or the blue, if a usher wasn't looking in the middle of the game. I remember the first opening day that I went to, my neighbor's mom had gotten tickets. She was a single mom, and she had gotten 3 tickets from the hospital she worked at, and she asked if I wanted to go. And my mom let me get out of school. I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade. And so I went to the game, and I was obsessed with the souvenir plastic cups. Like I was like, I want one of those to take home with me after the game. And then the game ended and we're still there, and everyone had left their plastic cups there. And so I just, me and my neighbor just start going around collecting all of them. And I must have brought home 40 plastic cups. And my mom was like, what do you want me to do with these? Like, to me, they were fine china. Like, just throw the old glasses away. We're going to use these from now on. But there was just like little memories of like being at games more than actual games.
Yeah.
And the first memory I have of like a specific moment was when Pete got his 41-92 hit. I was in the bathtub when he was about to come up. And my dad, I'll never forget this. My dad grabs me out of the tub, throws my little robe on me, and sits me down in front of the TV because he wanted me to see it. He knew the importance of the moment. And I remember sitting on my living room floor watching him get his hit, soaking wet,
That's great.
And my dad had that foresight. I was, let's see, it was 85, right? So I was 8 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
That's tremendous.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
I remember another night we were at Chili Time, which is a St. Bernard staple that's not around anymore, but it's where everybody went. And we're having dinner one night, and the school custodian comes up and he's like, hey, I got some extra tickets for the game tonight if you guys want to go. The weather's not looking great. And I was like, can we? And my dad's like, no. He's like, it's terrible outside, and that was Tom Browning's perfect game night. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie and say I was there like everybody else in Cincinnati. I had the chance to be there and we weren't. And I remember telling my dad the next day, I was like, man, we missed that. And he's like, it probably would have been a boring game. There weren't any hits.
Yeah. How boring could that
I know. But, I just, my love of baseball and my love for the Reds, it's always superseded however the team is.
Yeah.
Like I always want them to win, but just like the memories that you can make at the ballpark with your family or your friends, or now me as a parent, like that trumps everything to me. And I'm trying to teach, my kids to be good fans, not get caught up in, the frustration that can consume your life when you live and die by every loss, especially in the Bengals is bad enough when it's, 16 games a year, but you can't do that for baseball. It's 162, but that's what I also love about baseball is like, you don't have to wait a week to get some taste out of your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. So the cup, you're talking about the little Sunday cups, right? You brought them 40 of those.
No, I'm talking about the like 32-ounce plastic drink cups.
Drink cups. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, drink cups.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Hey, Josh, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but
Yeah.
since we're talking about the Reds, and I believe you're a funny guy, how about some of the Reds? Is there a favorite, a Red who's particularly funny, either presently or in the past?
Oh, man. Sean Casey, for my money, is like, I could listen to him talk about anything. Like, I just think he is hilarious, and he's got the best stories, and he's so animated. George Foster's another one that, like, just naturally funny and charming, that it lets him get away with saying things that probably would offend you if they came from somebody else, like whenever he sees me, it's, hey, you're not funny. Like, he'll yell for however far away I am. You're not funny. You're not funny. I was at spring training once, and I'm just walking past the ballpark, and you're not funny. And I'm like looking around, and he's behind a fence, he's, hey, you're not funny. I love George Foster. Pete was an amazing storyteller. Johnny's always been very kind to me, and I love listening to him tell stories. Like those guys. Part of it is probably just how in awe I am of what they're talking about, because it was like their life, and to me, like, each story is one of the greatest things I've ever heard. But then, now through my relationship with the Reds and the community fund, and like some of the things that I get to do as like a comedian or an MC, it's allowed me to be funny for them, which is, surreal. Like to see like some of your heroes laughing, especially like Marty. Like last year, there was a charity that roasted Marty, and he had me come do jokes at that, which was just awesome. I'm up there like making fun of Jeff Ruby and Cy Lease and just like all these like icons, and it was like super fun for me to see that I was able to get away with saying this stuff, and they were laughing. Tom Browning, before he passed away, I got to roast him, and I said some terrible, terrible things, and they were just cackling, and I just love that. I love that I get to do that kind of stuff. And if my dad was here, he wouldn't believe it. He would not believe all the cool stuff I get to do.
I seem to remember watching something. I think it was there was a Reds game, but like they had a thing where you and another guy were watching the game and commenting on it as it was going on. And I can't remember if it was you or the other guy's name you should say, because I can't remember it. But one of you did just a incredible Jeff Brantley impression.
It was probably me. Yeah. So during COVID, I was approached by Bally Sports to do basically like a trivia show that would be on during Reds games, because nobody was at the games.
Yeah.
And they had me and a guy who's from Cincinnati. He's an actor who lives in New York now. His name's Mike Sauce.
Okay.
And then Danny Graves was our co-host.
All right. Okay.
And basically we would watch the game, talk about the game, and then between innings we would through this Bally's app, we would have trivia questions and people could answer, and then we gave away prizes to the point winners at the end of the game, and there was a chat feature where they could ask us questions or talk about stuff that was happening, and we were constantly monitoring that. It was a really cool idea, and I miss it. It was a huge commitment to for 3+ hours every day for that whole summer, but I absolutely loved it. But yes, I love talking like Jeff Brantley, and I'll tell you who else, if you ever get him on here, Brent Suter loves talking like Jeff Brantley, and we have a Jeff Brantley off every time we see each other, because what Brent has figured out, even though he's not a comedian, he's figured out that when you do impressions of people, it's partly the voice, but it's also the cadence and like finding like little catchphrases. And so the one that he and I lock in on is, now you talk about a guy. He says that all the time. And every time I see Brent Suter and every time he sees me, it's like, now you talk about a guy. And it's never not funny. And now my kid is doing it, and he'll do it out of context. You know, he'll be like, our dog will jump up on the couch and he'll be like, now you talk about a pug. And it's become an inside joke. And Jeff Brantley, I don't believe, has any idea about it. You know,
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Hey, Josh, weren't you once an umpire at a Dayton Dragons game? I think I heard that along the line. I might have seen it on YouTube.
Why you got to
Can you
bring
tell
up
us about
old
that?
stuff, Randy? So, yes, the worst gig I've ever had in my life. You know, I tell this story on stage because when comedians walk on stage, they say, hey, it's good to be here, you know, and I like to let audiences know I mean that when I say it, because that's a good gig, and I know a good gig because I've had terrible gigs. And I did stand up dressed like an umpire during a minor league baseball game, which is a terrible gig, you know. As I've mentioned, I've been doing stand up for over 25 years now, and 6 months in, I didn't know there's jobs that you're not supposed to take. So I'm doing a show in Dayton, and this woman from the Dragons comes up to me after the show, and she's like, how would you like to do stand up in front of a sold out stadium? And I'm like, lady, I've been doing this half a year. I'm more than ready for it, which was the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life, agreeing to do this. But I drive up to Dayton. They give me my umpire uniform, which was 2 sizes too small. Not a good look on me. You know, I remember the guy goes, hey, your chest protector's on funny. And I'm like, man, I'm not wearing a chest protector. You gave me a medium. And this guy, I wish I could find out his name, and I probably can if I search hard enough. But this guy was like 6'7", 260. Okay. He was a linebacker for the Jets. His wife worked for the Dragons. And in the summers, in the off season, they would be in Dayton. And so just for fun, he would go around the field with the mascot, throwing out T-shirts into the crowd and stuff. Just massive, massive man. And I'm getting kind of like nervous about all this, what I've signed up for. Am I ready to do this? And I go, what if this goes as bad as I think it might? And he says, if anything goes wrong, I will come out and save you. And I was like, cool. I trusted this guy. So I'll tell the full story now. I tell a condensed version on stage, but this is exactly how it happened. And I'm doing it because we're Reds fans. So it's the bottom of the third, and I'm supposed to go out between the third and the fourth. Willie Mo Pena, who was the guy everyone came to see, like he was selling out games by himself. Everyone wanted to see Willie Mo. He has a close play at home plate, and the ump calls him out, and he gets up and is livid, and he's arguing in the ump's face, and the ump runs him, throws him out of the game. Everybody's booing, and the manager comes out. The ump doesn't want to hear it. Manager goes back to the dugout, and they go, hey, we're going to hold off a couple innings because it's kind of tension, and I'm supposed to pretend to be the umpire, right? I'm like, okay, so now it's now the bottom of the fifth. I'm going to go out after the fifth. Another bad play, close play at the plate, another bad call. And they know it because they're showing it on the screen. The manager goes out to argue again. Now he gets tossed, and everyone hates this umpire. But I'm dressed like him. I'm supposed to go out and try to get laughs as him. So they're like, all right, we're going to wait another inning. So now we're in the visitors dugout because the umpire said, if we're still going to do this, I don't want to be hanging out in the home team's dugout because they all hate me. So the inning ends. I put on my mask. He comes down. They're like, tonight's umpire is also a stand-up comedian, and he's going to do his act for you. Boo! I'm just walking to home plate. I have not said a word. They
think you are the umpire.
That's right.
All right. Okay.
So I get out there to home plate. I start doing my act, which at the time was making fun of flea markets, like Trader's World, and people who go to flea markets. And the line that I say in that joke was, the flea market has more white trash than a dumpster behind a paper plate factory. That's what I said. So then so now, like, they're not booing anymore. They're not laughing, but it's kind of quiet. And I say, are there any NASCAR fans here? And the place is like, yeah, And I go, who loves NASCAR? People who go to flea markets. Boo! I'm telling you, hot dogs, pretzels, anything that can be thrown is hitting me at home plate as I stand there smiling behind the mask. Because I tell people I can't explain it, but there's something exhilarating about feeling unfiltered hatred from that many people at one time. But I'm not sure what to do because they're hating it. I don't know if I'm supposed to say good night. I see that guy jog out of the dugout and he's like coming towards the plate, and I'm like, okay, here he comes to tell everybody is just, don't keep throwing stuff at the umpire. This guy's just a comedian. It's just a joke. He's not the real umpire. He tackles me. I'm telling you, like, picks up speed in like the last 4 steps and just drills me. And now I'm laying on the ground. I see him like parading around my lifeless body, and everybody's loving it, right? Because he saved the day. He picks me up. I'm telling you, one hand picks me up, throws me over his shoulder, and he grabs the mic off the ground and he goes, "Hey, Dragon fans, I'll take out the trash tonight." Yeah! And like, I can't breathe. Like, I legit cannot breathe. I'm in his ear going, And so we get underground, and he goes, "That was crazy." And I go, "That's the wildest thing that's ever happened to me." And he goes, "Were you crying out there?" And I was like, was I crying? No, I was curious if I was ever going to breathe again. I can't believe that I did this for $35. And then I tell the audience, yeah, it's good to be here.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I'll never forget it. And they told me that right after that happened, they started leaving the camera on in the stadium for the whole game. Because at that point, they turned it off between innings because the only reason they had it was to try to get footage for scouting purposes on their team or other teams. That's the only reason they were even recording those games. But after that happened, they switched over to just because you never know what could happen between innings. So I'm bummed that there's not video footage of it.
Oh, man.
But I will never forget it.
That is too much. So I was watching a clip on YouTube about your hobby of people watching, which was great. And, the guy at Gatlinburg being fascinated by the taffy. But is the ballpark a good place for people watching? Is there anything we should look for the next time we go?
Oh, man, the ballpark is fantastic. The ballpark is like spring training for a Disney World trip. You know what I mean? Like, you can get all of your good people watching practice in there, because you're going to have all the elements at a baseball game. You're going to have parent screaming at their kids, right?
Yeah.
Like a lovely family outing just ruined by unappreciative children who don't want to watch the game and just want to go play on the play set or wiffle ball field. You're going to have guy who yells at the umpire no matter what, no matter where his seats are. You're going to have guy explaining baseball to his kid, clearly has no idea what he's talking about. You're going to have old lady still keeping score in the scorebook. You're going to have drunk college kid who does not realize how many children are around him when he's yelling out. Yeah, I mean, it's all walks down there, you know. You're going to have guy. My favorite is Businessman Special Day, where you have guy in work clothes who just puts a jersey on over his like button-up shirt. You're like, bro, go change. You look ridiculous right now.
Hey, Josh, you've shared the stage with a lot of big names that we mentioned earlier and others. Do you have a favorite comedian you particularly listen to or enjoy?
Oh man. Well, there's kind of like three phases. Like there was the pre-comedy me, you know, which feels weird to say, but Bill Cosby was like the biggest influence on me growing up. I was enamored by how clean he was and how he could tell a story that lasted like 20 minutes and you know was able to keep people's attention. Stephen Wright, Wendy Liebman, Larry Miller, Jake Johansson. Those were the people that I would see on TV that I was like, man, I love their timing, or, you know, you don't see the punchline coming, like that kind of, like I was enamored by the art of telling a joke, not just what they were saying, but like how they wrote it, and how they delivered it. And then I started doing stand up. And as I was coming up, you know, Mitch Hedberg was a huge influence on me, Brian Regan, Dave Chappelle, um, Dave Attell, Bill Burr. I like those were guys that when I saw them on stage or worked with them at a comedy club, there was just something different. It was something different about everybody else that I would, if it was 7 shows in the week, I was in the room watching all 7 shows because I could not absorb enough of it. And then now today, you know, Nate Bargatze is one of my favorites to watch. I don't think anybody's doing it better than him right now. Of course, Jim Gaffigan is incredible. You know, there's just guys that have just you just look at them and even as someone who's done this for 25 years, you're still in awe that someone can be that good at it. And you know, for me, it inspires me to keep trying to get better. Like you can never be done. You can never stop improving.
I love that. No, I love to hear that because I love one of the things I loved about Joey Votto was just he had that same attitude. I think he just sat in the dugout and watched other guys and you know learned and just always wanted to get better. So that's really cool.
And you talk about funny, like
Yeah.
Joey Votto is so under like it's just not fair that he didn't get the credit for how funny he was with our fans, with other fans, with other players when he's on TV. Like that guy is just so undervalued for, you know, people thought he was like a stick in the mud, but he was hilarious. There's a great video. I don't know if you've seen it where Jerry Seinfeld and David Letterman are having a conversation about Joey Votto.
No.
It's fantastic. You guys have to look it up.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
But basically they each have a Joey Votto story.
Huh. That's awesome.
And they're so funny. And it's like a great example of how clever he was.
So, you know, speaking of clever and funny, another clip of you that I saw on YouTube was your bouquet of flowers joke, your thing. And I want you to share that with the listeners, but I have a follow-up question. Okay, so go ahead.
So this is a true story. This happened. And it, you know, like I always struggle when people ask like, why'd you become a comedian? And what I've come to realize is I'm a comedian because I feel like I'm funny all the time. But when I'm funny during the day out in public, people aren't ready for it because I haven't been introduced as a comedian. They're not at a comedy show. So it catches people off guard, even though it's something that I think was hilarious. In the moment, the person wasn't ready for it. So what does it just go to waste? Or do I turn it into a bit that I can use on stage doing stand-up? So a couple Valentine's days ago, I'm at Kroger. I'm in the floral area looking for a bouquet to bring home. And a couple feet away, there's another guy doing the exact same thing. And then out of nowhere, he just goes, man, it's crazy how much money you got to spend on something that's just going to die. And I turn to him and I go, I know. And you got to buy him flowers. And he was not ready for it. Like he just like in the moment I thought this might be the funniest thing I have ever said off the cuff in public. And this guy was just like it was like he felt bad for me or something. He's like, "Oh man, well, good luck, buddy," and he just walks away. And I'm texting my wife, I'm texting every comedian I know, like, "You will not believe what I just said," and no one was around to laugh at it. And I was like, "That's why I'm a comedian. I'm a comedian for moments like that because I do this stuff or I say this stuff, and no one's around to appreciate it." And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put that in the act.
Oh
Give
yeah,
it a second chance at life.
so you did, and my follow up question was, and you sort of answered it, was did you run it by your wife first?
I run everything by her.
Okay.
I'm not dumb. Jim Gaffigan had the funniest line, and he was talking about their finances and stuff, and he's having this conversation with his wife, and he says, "It's our money." You know, he's like making sure she knows that his money, it's our money. And he goes, "And if I don't keep putting that in my act, it will be her money." So I think all married comedians understand this. The cover of my second album, Unsung Hero, is a picture of my wife 2 days after our son was born in a hospital gown with no makeup. And she gave me permission to use that as our album cover. So that goes to show you how cool she is when it comes to this kind of stuff. But the picture is really funny because it's me in the hospital bed holding our newborn, and she's in the chair next to the bed giving me a sip of water from a cup. And she had a C-section and hadn't been in a normal chair for a few days, and she wanted to just sit in a chair. So her mom was in the room. I was like, "You sit here. I sit on the bed and hold the baby," just so she could sit upright. And I said, "How funny would it be if the nurse walked in right now and I'm the one in the bed getting pampered while you're the one who's been through everything, you know, sitting in a chair." And so I told her mom to take this photo because I thought it would be really funny. And it's a hilarious photo. And that's why the album's called Unsung Hero. But she's cool with all of it.
That's good. I was given a talk one time, and my wife went with me, and she didn't want to go anyway. And I don't know, a question came up, and I can't remember. It was something like, you know, have you ever had anybody really get angry at you, you know, over something you've done? I said, "Well, have you met my wife?" And then like, I shouldn't have said that. I think as it was coming out of my mouth, my brain's like, "Why'd you do that?" You know?
There's this a cappella group called Straight No Chaser.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. Plug for those guys. If you never heard of them, check them out. They come to the Taft every year, and I've become buddies with these guys. And so they always give me and my wife and children tickets to a show every time they're here, and it's like a nice family night out. Well, a couple years ago, my son was probably, I don't know, he was probably 10. My daughter was like 5 or 6. And they asked me if I wanted to do a few minutes before the show started. And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be awesome." I was like, my kids have never seen me do stand-up live. They've seen clips of me and stuff. And so I go out and I do this set, and our seats are great because they're from the band. And so that I can see my wife and kids right there in the front, in the middle. And I start doing this joke about my daughter and, you know, something that she said at home. And I just see her, she keeps looking at my wife like this, and she's like, "I never said that." Right? It's like every little joke about her, she's like, that's not true. And my wife's like, "We'll talk about it later." Like she couldn't wrap her head around that I was joking and kidding. She's like, "What? I don't like princesses." You know, it's so funny. So I had to sit her down and go, "Dad sometimes embellishes, you know, and says things that aren't true, but I'm not saying anything mean about you." And so now she loves it. She'll be like, I never said that, but that's hilarious."
Hey, Josh, you're also well known locally for your Cincy Shirts shops, and you're sporting your Cincy Shirt cap today. Tell us how that all started. As a stand-up comedian, you got a pretty busy schedule, I'm sure, and all of a sudden you start Cincy Shirts.
Yeah. So when I started doing stand up, what I noticed was a lot of the old, I mean, I was young. Like, I was literally a month before my 21st birthday was the first time I ever did stand up. And at that time, that was really young. Like, most people were giving stand up a try when they hit like 30 or late 20s. I was by far the youngest person at all the open mics. But what I noticed was when I would meet some of these headliners who'd been at it for 20, 30 years at that point, they had no relationships with their kids. They had no relationships with their, they were divorced. They lived on the road. They seemed very lonely, and I was very close with my dad and still am with my mom. Like, family's very important to me. And I lost my dad in 2008. And I just had this realization that, tomorrow's not promised. And, I didn't want to be the guy that when I had kids, I wasn't around, especially for their formative years. And so in '05, I was selling a lot of t-shirts on the road. And I had a buddy here in Cincinnati who went to the art academy. He was a local artist, super talented, Darren Overholzer. And we clicked instantly. And he was a bit of an entrepreneur. And I was, looking to do my own thing in addition to stand up. So we came up with, actually, our first concept was a Monopoly game for the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. We had developed this whole personalized Monopoly game, and because I was touring as the opener for those guys, and I thought, man, they would sell 1 million of these if we got it in Walmart and stuff. And that project ended up fizzling out, but we had so much fun working together that we're like, let's do something else. And funny t-shirts were big at that time, like really big. Like, that was what everybody was wearing, was like movie quotes or movie references, like Bushwood Country Club and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so we decided to start a funny t-shirt company, and he was going to do the art. And then when I was on the road, I would tell people about it at shows. And then if I was going to like Bob and Tom or a radio show in a local market, to tell people to come to the comedy club that weekend, I'd wear one of my funny shirts, and they'd always be like, oh, that shirt's hilarious. It's like a Coming to America reference or something, like Randy Watson. And I'd go, oh, I made this. This was my company. And I'd plug it on the radio. And so we started with the funny t-shirts. We opened up a little print shop in Dayton, Kentucky. We did some local designs. The first design that ever got us any press was just a black shirt with white letters, and it said, "Even God hates the Steelers." That was the first shirt. And it was also the first shirt that got us a cease and desist. But we noticed that there was a market for local t-shirts.
Sure.
And growing up here, I don't know if you guys are both born and raised here or not, but I always had an affinity for iconic brands, like whether it was Americana Amusement Park or Mama's Cookies or Surf Cincinnati. Like, there were just things that I saw, and I knew was the same way for other Cincinnati people, that as soon as you see that logo, you're taken back to great memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem was they all had like 8 or 9 colors in it. So it was going to be impossible to screen print all of them. And so we kind of just did the funny t-shirt thing for a while. And then a few years later, we partnered up with a company that had this new printer that could print full color right onto the shirt, one at a time. You could do photos or anything. And we felt like that was a good time to launch our All Cincinnati brand, because now we could do all these old logos that, didn't have a trademark anymore, which was huge because they'd been gone long enough. So we did, the Uncle Al show and Van Loonens and Swallens and, just like anything that we could think of, all the old Kings Island rides that were gone, King Cobra and Screaming Demon. And what I learned quickly was this funny shirt site that we had built up to hundreds of designs. People would see it and they would say, man, these are all really funny, but I really like that one and I'm going to buy that one. But with Cincy Shirts, you showed that site to Cincinnati and they were like, I want every single one of these. Right. So we knew we had something there and we started to build up the brand. We would only do online. And then once in a while we would, set up at Bunbury Music Festival or Brouhaha or something. And right around Christmas, everybody would say, where's your store? I need to come get something from your store. And we're like, we don't have a store, and our cutoff to buy to get it shipped to you is 3 weeks before Christmas. So in 2014, we found a spot on Main Street that had been a boutique but was empty. They offered us a great deal on just a 3-month lease for November, December, and January. And we thought, even if we are only open 3 months, we'll get that Christmas rush. And so we bought some fixtures off of Craigslist, picked out some of our best sellers, and then just opened in early November. And we had a good enough November, December that 2015 was the All-Star game. And we thought, man, it'd kind of be cool to be downtown, during the All-Star game summer. So we stayed open for all of 2015. And then in the fall of 2015, they announced FC Cincinnati was going to be a thing. So we went to them and said, we know you're going to sell jerseys and scarves. What if we just sold T-shirts for people to wear to games? And they're like, we don't even know if people are going to show up, but sure, go for it. Well, second FCC home game, they break the league attendance record, and the team was not prepared to handle it. They had gone through all of their inventory, so they were sending people to our store, and now you've got 20,000 people at every FC Cincinnati game who have nothing to wear, and we're the only ones selling it. So we used that money to open our Hyde Park store. The next year, Fiona was born. We raised over $1 million for Team Fiona. And, we just we just became known as the place for anything Cincinnati T-shirt related, and our team is so great. With something happens in the Reds game tonight, we're going to have a shirt about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the print on demand's great because if we don't sell any, we don't sell any. But if we do, we do. And, the way that the players have embraced us, I mean, seeing all the guys wearing our Pete Rose Day shirts during batting practice on Wednesday night, I mean, that will never not be cool to me, even this far into the process, to see people who play for your favorite team or heroes of yours like Johnny Bench and George Foster and Pete Rose wearing a shirt of them that you made for them. Like that's never not going to be cool to me. And then we parlayed that into intheclutch.com, which is our national sports brand for MLB for all the other teams, and Old School Shirts, which is what we did for Cincy, the vintage stuff, but for other cities. And it's a real company now, but it's afforded me the opportunity to not have to be on the road all the time. So I could be home and be a dad for all these years that my kids were young.
That's great. I want to tell you a quick story about your over the Rhine. So your Main Street store. So my wife and I, in the summer of a couple years ago, we're walking down. We see in the window, you had a shirt that it had a picture of Matt Foley, the Chris Farley character. It says, "My team plays in a stadium down by the river."
Yeah.
We're like, we got to buy that for our son Ben, and so we buy it. And we said we'll give it to him for Christmas. So we kind of, she puts it in a closet. And Christmas morning, before presents are opened, Ben and my other daughter and my daughter Ellie and my wife and I, who we live in Hyde Park, and we're walking. We take a long walk, and we walk past your Hyde Park store, and in the window is my team plays in the stadium down by the river. Ben stops, looks at it, goes, "Oh my God, that T-shirt's awesome." And we're just looking, my wife and I are just looking at each other like, he's going to love this present.
That's hilarious.
Which he did.
That's hilarious.
It was awesome.
I love that, man. Like when we first opened, the way people would come in the store and just go down a rabbit hole of memories.
Yeah.
They see a shirt that says, "I was on the Uncle Al show," or Mike Ziliox, our mutual friend Mike Ziliox, big Zantigos guy. And so like you could get him talking about Zantigos all day. And I love that when people come in, they're just taken back. Like you just can't, there's not a feeling better than just watching somebody reminisce like that.
Hey, speaking of Mike Ziliox, he was a guest on our show. You know, he wrote a book called At Titanic Struggle, the best of Marty Brenneman. Have you ever, do you enjoy pulling pranks on people? Have you ever pulled a prank like on a guy like Mike Ziliox?
I mean, you're gonna have to be more specific. We're talking almost 30 years of pranks. But my favorite one when we worked together, it was when pagers were a thing, right? Like it was pre cell phone, or maybe it's basic cell phone, but you could send a text message to someone's pager. Like it would be like a full thing you could read. And so he's like buried in his work at his desk. I'm standing next to it. He has no idea I'm even standing there. I'm waiting for him to look up. He never does. So finally I just turn my back to him so that my butt is like right by his face. Still has no idea that I'm there. And I message him to his pager, look to your left. And he picks it up, he looks at it, and he just goes, I'm just like right there. And he fell out. He has the memory of an elephant. Like he still talks about that. But he's one of my all-time favorites.
I wanted to ask a quick question. I know we've taken up a bunch of your time, and we'll wrap it up here in a minute. But
I'm fine.
I listened to Conan O'Brien's podcast, which I think is just awesome. And I recently watched the Mark Twain Awards. I don't know if you saw that or not, but so many comedians talked about what an influence Conan was. And I just was he one of yours as well?
He was, yeah. I was like, I had seen the Tonight Show a couple times with Johnny Carson, and then Jay Leno. While I thought he was really great at what he did, it felt like he was speaking to like an older audience than me. And I don't think I was comedy savvy enough to really appreciate David Letterman and how good he was with the deadpan and I later appreciated Letterman on an incredibly higher level than I did when I was in the moment that age. But Conan's silliness like resonated with me from I remember when he got that show, and it was a brand new show, and it captured me instantly. And I always felt, for some guys it was Letterman, some guys it was Carson. For me, like I wanted to be on Conan O'Brien because that was the guy that resonated the most with me at that point in my life when I was watching late night TV.
Yeah. That's good to hear. No, it just sounds like he's really helped out a lot of guys too.
Yeah, the self-deprecation, like I don't think anybody does it better. I mean, he's so good, and he still is. I'm glad he's doing that podcast because it lets him and that HBO show too.
Okay, Josh, let's do a little word association. We like to do this a few times with our guests we just mention a name and you can say whatever you want to say about him. You've already, I was going to ask you about the funniest Red. How about somebody like Ellie De La Cruz?
Generational, like maybe since Ken Griffey Jr., I can't think of somebody that I would go to the ballpark just for one person because they might do something you've never seen before.
How about the FieldHouse? Isn't that a new place you've just opened up?
It is. There was an indoor baseball facility, little 20,000 square foot warehouse that my son was taking hitting lessons and pitching lessons at. His team would practice there every once in a while. It's very run down, torn nets, torn turf. The walls were all banged up. It smelled. Oh, the smell. And I just, as I would sit in there for whatever reason, I would just go, man, if I ran this place, I would do it so much different, And I found out that the guy's lease was up and he was going to be shutting it down. So I got a little team together, asked if they wanted to go in on it with me. We went to the landlord and said, we'd like to do a similar model to what was in here, but do it a little differently. And we fixed the walls, fixed the ceiling, put in new turf, new netting, got pitching machines with hit tracks so you can do simulated games, and like it's basically like a golf simulator but for baseball. Got a full food and beverage area with a license to sell beer on tap for the parents to have a cold one while the kids are practicing or taking a lesson. um, Created a cool little birthday party room for birthday parties or corporations to come in for a team building exercise. And we rebranded it the FieldHouse. We opened March 1st, and the response has been incredible. There's such a need for it, especially on this side of the river. But we did this netting system where you can chop up the turf area in a number of different ways to have 10 individual hitting tunnels, or just have the whole thing open depending on if the nets are opened or closed. So we've already had a comedy show in there to kick things off. And next month we're doing our first baseball card and memorabilia show. We're having an evening with Bronson Arroyo on Saturday, June 14th. So he'll be playing music and telling stories and answering questions. So that's going to be really cool. Elliot Sloan, the lead singer of Blessed Union of Souls, is going to be playing music with him. I mean, it's going to be a really cool night. But that's the kind of stuff that we want to do in there, is community events, baseball themed stuff. And we also started our own organization called Red Legs OKI, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. And so, it's a travel ball team that plays in tournaments. We started with 8 teams. We're wearing old Reds uniforms. So we have the City Connect uniform. We have the 2002 white with the red stripes and the black undershirt. And they are sharp.
Sweet.
I'm telling you, every tournament we've been to, everybody's like, those uniforms. And then we have the Big Red Machine, all gray, just the Cincinnati across the chest. And the kids even wanted to wear old-fashioned stirrups. So they have knickers, and then they have the red stirrups with white socks to really sell the Big Red Machine uniforms. And it's just, we're paying homage to the history of the Reds and something that we want to build. The community fund does such great things with their RBI program. But you kind of have to qualify to play for that team, through certain economic, stipulations, they're servicing the kind of kids that probably aren't going to have the opportunity to play on a full travel baseball team. And I mean, Randy, my passion for the community fund, and Charlie Frank and you and everybody, Owen, and everyone that's a part of it. So we want to just sort of complement that with an organization that teaches baseball the right way, focuses on fundamentals, focuses on creating young men that will contribute to their community instead of just the best player who is win at all costs. There's so many nightmares in youth sports these days, and we just want to try to do things a little bit different in our capacity. And hopefully that relationship with the community fund and the Reds grows to, where we can be a part of what they do on an official level. But them giving us our blessing to call the team that and wear those uniforms is massive, and
it's awesome.
Grateful.
And that's in the facilities in Union, Kentucky, right?
It's in Independence, Covington area. It's right off of Highway 17, right off of 275 in the middle of northern Kentucky. You can get to it from anywhere in Cincinnati or northern Kentucky. It's the kyfieldhouse.com. You can see all of our events. We have instructors who played professional ball on some level. You can, like I said, book birthday parties. Everything's on the website, but I would ask people to just check out the kyfieldhouse.com and come see us, because everybody that's been in there has been impressed by how it looks, and I think we're going to do some really awesome stuff there.
In CincyShirts.com, is that how you get if you want to buy a shirt these days?
CincyShirts.com. We have stores in Loveland and in Fort Mitchell. We can print on demand, so if you need something that day, come on in. If we don't have it, we'll make it while you wait. Yeah, and then the comedy stuff, obviously, come out and see a show. If you see that I'm in the area, would love to have you out. I promise not to make fun of you. And that's what people are scared of. They're scared, they see all these clips online of comedians talking and making fun of the crowd. I don't do that. I just want you to show up and listen. I'll handle the.
Except for your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. Except for MJ.
Well, Josh, this has been fantastic. We really appreciate your time. Good luck with Cincy Shirts and FieldHouse and your tour. And you're a busy guy, so we really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Really fun.
Jack, it's great to meet you. I hope our paths cross in person. Randy, great to see you. And tell Mike Ziliox to look to his left. I'm going to be standing there.
All right. Give it up for Josh Sneed.
Thanks, guys.
It's hard to control these folks.
I mean,
Josh.
Stop it. Seriously, press the stop button. Stop it.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
The whole town's batting about Cincinnati. What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.